When Emma walked into the restaurant that evening, she never imagined her dignity would be stripped away in front of dozens of strangers. She was just doing her job, serving food, smiling politely, and trying to make enough tips to help her sick mom pay hospital bills. But that night, her boss, a wealthy, arrogant CEO, decided to turn her into the punchline of his cruel joke. In front of a room full of laughing executives, he made her crawl on the floor like a dog just to prove his power. The humiliation burned deep in her chest. But Emma didn't yell. She didn't cry out loud. She just whispered to herself, "You'll regret this, but not the way you think." Hey everyone, welcome back to Kindness Action, where real stories remind us that kindness is the strongest force on earth. If you believe that compassion can change lives, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We post new heart-touching stories every week that prove kindness always finds its way back. Now, let's dive into Emma's story, one that starts with cruelty, but ends with the most unexpected act of kindness. Emma worked at a fancy downtown restaurant in Chicago. It was one of those places where the napkins were folded into perfect triangles and the wine glasses sparkled like diamonds. She wasn't rich, not even close, but she carried herself with quiet pride. Every night after work, she'd visit her mom in the hospital, bringing soup and stories to make her smile. One Friday night, a big corporate dinner was scheduled. The owner of the restaurant had rented out the main hall for a famous tech CEO, Richard Cole. He was known for his money, charm, and arrogance. People called him a genius businessman, but his staff called him the Storm. When he walked into a room, everyone straightened their backs and forced fake smiles. That night, the restaurant buzzed with tension. Richard sat surrounded by his executives, laughing loudly, showing off his success. Emma, trying her best to stay calm, approached the table with a tray of wine glasses. As she leaned over, one glass tipped over slightly and spilled a few drops on Richard's designer jacket. The whole table went silent. Richard stood up slowly, a mocking smile forming on his face. "So this is what five-star service looks like," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Emma's cheeks burned. She stammered an apology, reaching for a napkin. But instead of accepting it, Richard smirked and said, "You know what? You should get down and clean it properly." The room gasped. At first, Emma thought he was joking. But his stare told her he wasn't. He pulled the chain of laughter tighter by adding, "Come on, crawl like a dog and wipe it off. Maybe that's where you belong." Some people chuckled awkwardly, others looked away in shame. Emma's heart pounded. She wanted to run, to scream, but she needed her job. Her mother's treatment depended on it. So, with tears in her eyes, she got down on her knees and cleaned the floor as laughter echoed around her. That moment burned into her soul. When she stood back up, she didn't look at Richard with hate, just quiet determination. She finished her shift, took her small tips, and went home. But that night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the scene, hearing the laughter, feeling the sting of humiliation. And then, something changed inside her. She decided she wouldn't take revenge through anger, she would take it through success and kindness. The very next morning, Emma sat down with her laptop and opened an old email from a local business incubator. Months ago, she had applied for a small grant for a social startup idea she'd dreamed of, a community cafe that trained and employed people struggling to get back on their feet. She had been too scared to follow through before. But now, she had a reason. She spent the next few weeks working day and night. Every break between shifts went into planning, budgeting, and learning. She saved every extra dollar, took online classes, and partnered with a few kind investors who believed in her idea. Slowly, her dream began to take shape. Within a year, Heart and Hands Cafe opened its doors, a warm, cozy space filled with laughter, community, and kindness. The cafe didn't just serve food, it served hope. Emma hired veterans, single mothers, and people who had been rejected elsewhere. The place became famous for its compassion as much as its coffee. One day, a corporate event booking came in under a familiar name, Cole Enterprises. Richard Cole himself walked into the cafe, not realizing who owned it. The moment he saw Emma behind the counter, his confident smile vanished. He stumbled through his words, clearly embarrassed. Emma greeted him with the same grace she always had. "Welcome to Heart and Hands Cafe," she said softly. "It's good to see you again." He hesitated, then muttered an apology. I was terrible to you that night. I'm sorry. Emma smiled, not with pride, but peace. I forgave you a long time ago, she said. That moment taught me who I didn't want to become. And it also taught me who I could be. Richard nodded silently. He looked around, seeing the happy faces of employees and customers. For the first time, he seemed humbled. Before leaving, he donated a large sum to support Emma's cafe, a gesture that, for him, was rare. Emma didn't destroy Richard's life the way most people imagined. She didn't ruin his reputation or take revenge through anger. She destroyed his arrogance with kindness. Her act of forgiveness changed not just her story, but his too. Richard became one of the cafe's biggest supporters, funding other community projects and speaking about empathy and leadership. And Emma? She proved that real power doesn't come from money, status, or control, it comes from kindness. So, if you've ever been humiliated, mistreated, or underestimated, remember Emma's story. The best revenge isn't cruelty, it's compassion. It's showing the world that kindness is stronger than hate. If you were inspired by this story, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Action, like this video, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always wins in the end.